Taylor Guitars was started 50 years ago. This is our 50th anniversary. I'm surprised that we stayed in business because Kurt and I started it when I was 19, he was 21. I'd made a couple guitars and he'd repaired some guitars and we just dove in. People like the necks of our guitars, they like the sound of our guitars, and they got better and better over the years. And between us, we managed to grow a successful company. So now here we are, all these years later. If you just want to look at the overall picture, half century old, we make a lot of guitars. Well, you can run, but you can't hide from it. We've made a lot of guitars and they're everywhere. People ask me, like, what, are you a guitar player? Are you a maker? Whatever, but it's sort of both. My parents made stuff. My mom sewed clothes. My dad fixed our stuff. He made furniture, and so I grew up in a family that made stuff. And I did that from when I was young, from repainting my bicycle to finally one day making a guitar in high school woodshop. When I was 12 years old, I got interested in guitar playing. This was long before I made a guitar. And I thought, this is fun. I want to learn to do this. I bought a little $3 guitar, acoustic, from the neighbor across the street. Mike Broward was his name. I played that guitar for a while, and then pretty soon it had painted on binding. I worked on it. One day I sawed the neck off of it with a saw, tried to make an electric guitar out of it. I think that for me, solving a problem at first wasn't the main thing. It was finding out how things work. Everything I owned, I took apart. Some of them I never got to be able to put back together. My guitar making was really a lot about, like, how is this thing made? I scratched my head. What's this thing around the sound hole? Is that painted on or inlaid? It can't be inlaid. I didn't know what binding was or what fret wire was or anything like that. And I searched in the yellow pages, the old phone book, and I found a place called the American Dream. And I went out there and, like, wow, they had this stuff called fret wire and they had abalone in little sheets, and I started buying stuff from them. I graduated from high school in 1973. I was, 18 years old, and I went down there and talked to them, and it was a hippie shop. There was no, like, real employment that was, government approved. There wasn't a paycheck. It was just like a co-op. And you got a bench made out of 2x4s. A customer would come in and they'd order a guitar and, oh, okay, Bob, you make this guitar. And so I'd make this guitar, split the money with the owner of the shop. He paid for the materials, the utilities, all of that. And I loved it. I learned a lot from the owner named Sam Radding. He was a good craftsman. And his guitar making wasn't at all like the brands. It was his idea. So it was his thinking that got implanted in me first, and I continued making guitars, just our guitars, not anybody else's. I didn't study the other guitars that were out there. I just looked at this thing. It's shaped this way. It's supposed to do this. I want to play it when it's done. I would keep shaving that neck until it felt good in my hand. The thought didn't cross my mind that it would be weak. And I never was a repairman. I didn't learn what I would do by working on vintage guitars. I was a tweaker in that I want to tweak the process every day and make it a little bit better. And machinery and all this stuff just fascinates me. By having a guitar factory and building it, it's like, oh wow, we're big enough to buy a computer-controlled lathe, even though we don't need a lathe, but we could buy it to make this one knob on one thing, and now we're into some new technology. I just love that stuff. I'm thrilled every time a load of wood comes in, or a new machine comes in that we don't know. Well, even if it's just a duplicate of something we already have. Well, like this machine behind me, I mean, we've got 55 or 60 of these things in between our two factories, and it's still a thrill when they come in. And wood is the same way for me, and in many ways, the best part of guitar making is over when you open the log and look at it. It's like, wow, all your hopes and dreams about that. Now you got to get to work and make a guitar, and that's fun too, but there's nothing like looking inside a log. It's a prospector's sort of mentality. It's like, okay, open it up. It's like, wah, wah, wah. Or it's like, whoa, look at what's in there. Sam, the owner of American Dream, wanted to leave. He wanted to go do something else. And so he said, we're going to be democratic, and the people in the shop get to vote if you want to buy the shop, let me know, put together your proposal, and we'll vote on it. Well, Kurt, with his neighbor across the street, Steve Schimmer, decided they're going to do it. And Kurt went out and made this business plan. And I got together with a buddy of mine who was working side by side with me. And I said, maybe we'll buy it too. Kurt was asking his father about loaning him some money to do this. And his dad said, well, Kurt, do you know how to make guitars? He goes, no, not really. And he said, well, who down there does? He goes, oh, this guy, Bob Taylor. Well, get him to be your partner and I'll loan you the money. So Kurt said, hey, Bob, you want to join us and partner up? And I go, yeah, why not? We were children. I was 19, okay? He was 21. Kurt will always say, well, I think it was Bob's guitars, but I think it was, you know, what he says is true. He says people loved his guitars, but they would have loved a lot less of them if it wasn't me and Kurt together. I had the brain to look at wood and machines and figure out what a guitar could be and how we could go about making it. And Kurt had the brain to put together legal documents and a budget. He does what he needs to do and I do what I need to do, and we don't really get all up in each other's decisions. We had no money, and I would do little odd jobs using our machinery to earn a little money. You know, we just hung in there, and it was years before we started making money. I survived on eating Campbell's tomato soup and Braunschweiger liverwurst, because those were two really cheap foods to buy. I made liverwurst sandwiches on white bread with tomato soup, and I think we were 6 years into it when I said, I want to get paid. I'm tired of not getting paid. We have a habit of waiting for us to get wealthy enough to pay us, but we need to work our way into the budget. This was my budget-minded contribution. And I said, I don't care what it is, but we need to figure out what we can afford to pay. And so we decided that every Friday we would get a paycheck, and we started at $15 a week. I'm like, great, but I want my 15 bucks. I want my $15. And then we gave ourselves a $5 a week raise every week, so we crept it up until we got to about $85 a week, and then we held it there for some years. And sometimes we couldn't cash the check. I always say it was 12 years before we sort of got over the hump. But how long does it take to become a doctor? Go to medical school, to go to graduate school, to do your residency, to pay off your bills, you know, it takes that long. So people go, 12 years, that's amazing. Well, a lot of people spend 12 years getting their career going. There never was a moment where it's like, hey, this is gonna work. It was every day, it was creeping forward, and then eventually it got to where we were stepping forward, and then eventually got where we were leaping forward. But I do remember one day, 8 years into it, on a Friday. It was a beautiful kind of spring day like it is today. The sky was blue. And at the end of the day, which to me, there was never an end of a day. But this Friday, there was an end of a day at about 5 o'clock. And I walked out the shop to go home to have some dinner. Usually I come back and I locked the front door and I realized I'm all caught up on my work. And I can go home and just be done for today. And it was the first feeling I ever had of being done for the day. It might have been the last time too, but that was just, it was like, I love my life, you know? That was just a great moment. I'll never forget that. I love my life moment, you know? Kurt took guitars and he drove to Los Angeles and he visited a few stores like Fred Wallake's Westwood Music and McCabe's in Santa Monica. He took our guitars in, cold calling, opened the case, showed it to them, and the guys liked the guitars. They liked the way they sounded because they sounded different, maybe more clear. That was the days of Laurel Canyon and the beginning of A&M Records, and you know, David Geffen and you know, Herb Alpert and all these guys were starting record companies, and the Mamas and the Papas and David Crosby and Neil Young and Little River Band and You know, the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt, it was all sort of flowing down Laurel Canyon into Santa Monica. Some of those cats played acoustic and some of them played electric, and they're like, hey, we dig this guitar. And Wallachy handed those guitars out to people. And they liked what we were doing, and that's how we got started. It's, you know, he'd come home. First time he went, he borrowed my van. He drove up with like 5 guitars, and he came back later that night. It was late in the night, and he knocked on the door. Here, I'm return your van. I'm like, you didn't sell anything, did you? He goes, no, I sold everything, and I got 5 checks. We're like, hey, we did the happy dance. We didn't go out of business that day. Well, Taylor was just starting. And so our troubles weren't that the market wasn't good. Our trouble was we didn't know what we were doing and nobody knew our brand. And so what happened when the disco age came in the late 70s, and then things started changing into glam rock in the 80s. The other acoustic guitar manufacturers shrunk. Martin Guitars shrunk from their all-time 135-year historical high of making 20,000 guitars a year. They'd only made 5,000 guitars at the most. They were making 80 guitars a day. It was inconceivable that somebody could make that many guitars. That's a small number for today's market. They went down to making hardly any guitars at all. And we had gotten up to making about 3 guitars a day, maybe 4 guitars a day. And all of a sudden, instead of us making 1 guitar and Martin making 80 in a day, they were making 9 guitars a day, and we were making 4 guitars a day. Gibson quit making guitars. They had kind of shut down. Guild had shut down. People weren't doing it. So it was just these little small shops, Santa Cruz, Collings. When that happened and the market started coming back, now our company, we had some chops and we had a few dealers. We had a little bit of a name. We were doing some advertising. So we got to grow with the regrowth of the acoustic guitar business. So we became the size of a lot of our competitors by the market shrinking them. It couldn't shrink us. We couldn't be shrunk any smaller. One day my friend Tom Anderson from Anderson Guitar Works, most listeners will know of his wonderful electric guitars. This was in the early days, 1988, 89. He said, hey, I heard you got some really cool tools down there. Can I come down and visit? Yeah, he came down and we started showing him through the shop and he's looking at stuff. And I had this old gang saw that had all the blades in it on an arbor to cut a fretboard slot. I bought it from a Yugoslavian guitar maker that lived in San Diego, and his name was Bozo Podanovac, Bozo, you know. And he had bought a bunch of equipment from the K Guitar Factory when it went out of business. And they had this old cast iron thing, and I bought it from him. And I refurbished it, and I could push a fingerboard across and cut all the slots. And when I was showing him that, he goes, wow, that's really cool. I said, well, how do you do it? He said, well, we have this CNC mill that cuts them one at a time. And I said, tour's over, we're going to your shop. I mean, it was 2 days later that I was up in north of LA where he is, looking at his shop. And he had one of these machines called Fadal. He said, yeah, I was working with Dave Schechter, okay? Schechter Guitar Research and Schechter Guitars. And that place closed down. And then one day Dave called Tom and said, Tom, I'm working for a company that makes the machine that would be the machine if anybody ever made a machine to make guitars. It's perfect for guitars. Tom bought one. I saw his. It blew my mind. I had one a couple months later, and there was no turning back. What's amazing about people is there's a lot of things a person can build if they're highly skilled. But that's not repeatable, and it's not very expandable. So the first time you get something like a CNC machine, you use it to copy something that you're doing by hand. And then one day you go, wait a minute, I'm wasting this potential because this can do more accurate things I couldn't do by hand, so then you can design more intricate parts. 20 years after the first CNC in our shop, we were able to introduce the NT neck, because that neck has got to be precision, and the pocket that it goes into the guitar is precision, and you can't do that by hand. I mean, Andy Powers can do the nicest, cleanest handwork. It's unbelievable. If his life depended on it, he could do one as close as this, and then he could go make another guitar and do it that close. But in reality, even when he does it, it's just sort of a prototype job. And you realize we depend on these things to help us even design a more accurate, intricate guitar. So someone starts making guitars like I did because they want to make guitars. And then pretty soon, that business grows to where the adults have to come in. There needs to be adult supervision, right? And so then those come in the form of accountants and marketing and sales and finance, and they're always more professional, they're always more educated, maybe stronger personalities. And over time, the factory can become sort of this necessary evil. You know, gosh, all us people in the A suite here could make a living if we didn't have to support all these people. Why don't we go have this thing made somewhere else where it could be cheaper? The guitar making isn't there to support all these other jobs. Even marketing, which we're doing right now. The guitar isn't there to support marketing. Marketing is there to support the fact that we make guitars. I would lose the marketing before I lose the factory. I'd lose the accountant before I lose the factory. The factory shall survive as long as I have something to say about it, right? Because it's what the company actually really is, and everything else is there to support the guitar making. There are more and more people that want to know, I want to know about this thing. I want to know who it is that's behind it. I want to know, is the company a good citizen? You know, oh, what about these woods? They hear about that thing. So we try to pull people into our living room, so to speak, and let them get to know us. It's that first strum. It's the first strum. You put your fingers down, you play a note, and you're like, I like that. And our tone is different. I always say that you have to like it to like it. I'm not going to convince anybody to like it. Our tone has a flavor, people like it, and when they like it, they describe it in beautiful terms, and when they don't, they describe the exact same guitar in awful terms, you know? I just depend on people to like it. The things that are really objective about it can be, is its quality of construction well done? Is it easy to play? And this is the tone that we offer. That's not the antithesis, but it's another flavor from the tones that other guitars offer. And that's the thing.